Diogenes is designed for drilling and light sparring, providing clubs with a cheap, reliable, long-term trainer. The Diogenes is built solid but rough. There is no finesse to the aesthetic, and in places it's not particularly well finished. However, there are exceptions. If you opt for a cord grip, you'll find the twine is well wrapped and glued and easy to handle. Similarly, the crossbar is well made. It is simple but smooth and highly polished. Two different schilt designs are available. This is a fairly traditional design. The schilt is wide, thick and solid. It can certainly take a beating. On Diogenes version 1, the schilt had quite sharp edges as shown here. Later versions have smoother edges. Diogenes version 1 also had unrounded edges along the length of the blade. These edges had very sharp angles without even any beveling to mitigate the edge. The sharpness of these angles meant Diogenes version 1 could easily cause nicks and burrs when hitting softer weapons. Diogenes has a solid block tip, not a roll tip, covered with leather and tape to soften the impact of thrusts. The blade is very stiff and takes about 18 kilograms to flex to this point. This can make thrusts very uncomfortable. These photos show how our Galahad 1.0's edges have suffered slight chipping and flaking as a result of 10 minutes sparring against the harder, sharper edges of a Diogenes one. Later Diogenes models have smoother edges. I softened the edges of my Diogenes with an angle grinder. Don't shred a cutting disc the way I did, use a proper flap sanding disc. These photos show the initial results of repeated gentle grinding to soften the edges. With repeated passes, the bevel becomes more pronounced, though the edges still aren't actually rounded. As Neyman say, the Diogenes sword's main target is learning and training. It's too front heavy and stiff to be used safely for full contact sparring. The aesthetic is rough, Neyman call it good but ugly. Blade edges are now made milder and smoother than shown here. Diogenes is ideal as a reliable club trainer which will last for years. Galahad is a light and nimble feather for full contact sparring and tournaments. The general finish is of a much higher quality than the Diogenes, though there are occasional minor blemishes. The leather wrap looks like it would unravel quickly, but it hasn't even budged in the months that I've owned my Galahad. The slightly rough finish in some areas may be a concern to some people, especially at this price point. The hilt and crossbar are of a simple and elegant traditional design. The slightly beveled contours of the hilt are an attractive feature. A small groove on the crossbar thoughtfully accommodates the thumb grip. The hilt is thick and solid with hard, sharp edges. However, it has both a distal and profile taper. The blade is significantly thicker than the average reginae, but it has soft, smooth edges. Galahad's broad, deep fuller is an immediately arresting feature. Opinions will vary, but I found it highly appealing. The blade is fullered on both sides, making the weapon light and rear-weighted. Consequently, Galahad is very nimble in the hands and moves quickly without effort. Galahad's fuller also makes the blade very flexible. Consequently, it is extremely safe in the thrust, but very unforgiving of poor edge alignment. The blade isn't floppy or noodly, but if it isn't struck squarely on the edge, it can bend quite dramatically. Galahad has the solid block tip of all Neyman's feathers. It's broad enough for safety, and the smooth edges won't catch on clothing. Galahad flexes easily at about 9 kilograms. In these clips, Galahad is being used at left against a 1.7 kilogram Reginae feather at right. In skilled hands, Galahad easily holds its own against the heavier weapon. The next few exchanges show how flexible Galahad is and how safe it is in the thrust. In this exchange, a particularly heavy thrust caused Galahad to take a set. The blade was easily returned to shape, but this is worth noting. Galahad is an attractive weapon with a well-finished hilt and blade. It's quick and nimble, but its lightweight may exclude it from some tournaments. The blade is flexible in the thrust, but unforgiving of bad edge alignment. Later models have a slightly stiffer blade to resist sets, but are still flexible. The crossbar may bend after repeated hits. Mine has. Morholt is a heavy feather with excellent build quality and the same attractive aesthetic as the Galahad. An indentation on the crossbar accommodates thumb grips. A narrow fuller on both sides of the blade reduces weight while keeping the blade stiffer than Galahad's. The spiral leather grip wrap is tight and neat with barely discernible edges. Blade edges are very smooth and well rounded like the Galahad's. The tip is a solid block. It's smooth so it won't tear clothing. Here Morholt 3.0 is compared with Galahad 1.0. The aesthetic is the same, but Morholt has a better finish. Morholt flexes at about 17 kilograms. This is just basic drilling with Morholt, so there's not much to look at. However, you can see that the blade is very stable and it doesn't bend or whip around. Generally speaking, I've found it very similar in handling to my Regine custom heavy feather, which weighs 1.7 kilograms and has a slightly longer but thinner blade. Morholt feels more front-weighted than my custom Regine heavy due to Morholt's thicker blade and my Regine's significantly longer grip, 33 cm versus Morholt's 29 cm. My Regine also has a longer blade, 105 cm versus Morholt's 99 cm, so I'm having to adjust to the slightly shorter reach. I've been using my Regine heavy as my standard feather for the last 2 years, so I don't have a lot of experience with other weapons. However, in comparison with my Regine heavy and my limited experiences with the Regine standard, Regine light, and Neyman Diogenes, the Morholt feels good. Once I've adjusted to the shorter grip and blade, I'll be able to make a better assessment of its performance. Morholt is a solid weapon with very good build quality. The front weighting contributes to a strong blade presence. The blade is stiff and strong with a 17 kilogram flex. Be careful with thrusts. The crossbar seems stronger than the Galahad 1.0. It feels easy to move despite its weight, 1.65 kilograms.